All right. You ready?
Yep.
You were born ready, right?
Born ready, man.
Cool. All right. Well, welcome to another episode of the Blue is the New White podcast. My guest today needs no introduction, Mr. Gary McCreadie of HVAC Know It All podcast. Most of you know exactly who he is. Gary, thanks for jumping on with me today, man. I really appreciate it. I know you're busy. But I also know that my audience will appreciate the chance to get to know the man behind the mic. That's you.
Thank you, Josh. I appreciate the invite. And like on my podcast, I fully disclose everything, even my mistakes. And I forgot that we had an interview today. And I thought Thursday was the 24th. But anyway, I'm here now. I put down the tools to jump on with you. So I'm glad we're chatting.
Likewise, man. I appreciate it. So before we get into the meat and the good stuff here, can you give me a rundown, just like, on your roots, how you got started and kind of how you ended up where you are today?
Yeah. So in high school, I didn't really know what I was going to do after I left high school. And I'm pretty sure I've told many renditions of the story before, but my dad was always on my case about getting into a trade. And I remember one time he brought home this video of the stonemason thing, and I'm like, nah, I can't. I don't know. These guys were hauling around these big stones and stuff like that, and I'm like, no, that's not for me. So anyway, he had the HVAC guy that took care of the plant that my dad maintained, and sat down on the couch with me, and it sounded pretty cool. And I went to a school called Humber College in Toronto, and they had a refrigeration course, and it was a 2 or 3 year course. And I think I did the 2 year option, and I liked it, and I left and got a job probably within the first month or so of leaving, because I just handed out resumes to so many local companies in the area, right? And I got a call from one, and I ended up going to that interview with a cast because I had broken my thumb in a weird accident on rollerblades that may or may not have involved alcohol. But so I went to the interview with a cast on, and I got a second interview out of that, and then I got hired, and I'm still with the same company today, and that was almost 20 years ago. So that's kind of how I got into HVAC in a nutshell, really.
Oh, that's cool. So you've been with the same company almost 20 years. There's a lot to be said about that.
Yeah. I mean, I started out in a very, it was kind of like a pressure cooker of the way that the owner who owned the company when I first started, he ran the place very intensely. So I learned a lot because I was thrown into the fire, and I had to kind of fend for myself, and I was surrounded by a lot of other techs that were taught the same way. So everybody had a really good handle on the trade, and I was taught a lot of good things. But as I progressed into what I do now, I'm finding out that a lot of things I was taught was kind of maybe not always the correct way of doing things, but they were still methods that took these guys to where they were. So I mean, there's good things and bad things about old school methods, and I think we need to implement modern methods as well with them together to move forward. That's my opinion on it anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny you bring that up, because I mean, I was the same way. My dad, had taught me, and he taught me like the old school ways of doing things, which, there's different ways of doing things now, obviously. So let me ask you, when you were when you went through refrigeration school, did you find that the fundamentals that you learned in that class helped you immediately, or did you rely mostly on the field training that you got from the experienced techs?
I found that when I went into the field, the basic knowledge I had did help, but it was book knowledge, and my problem was the tools, because I was never a hands-on tools kind of guy, right? And my major learning curve is was using tools and learning how to use the tools. But once I got past that and the basic knowledge from schooling, and it all kind of came together as one, it took a while. It took, I would say, 2 to 3 years before it really started to click for me. But when I went to my first, see, in Canada, we do an apprenticeship and there's 3 blocks of schooling. And the first one you go to is basic. And when I went to basic, it was 3 years into my apprenticeship, right? And I found that because I had gone to a pre-apprenticeship course and gotten that base knowledge, that I knew a lot more than these guys coming in who had never gone to school before. So I would say yes, it did help a lot, going to pre-apprenticeship school and getting that basic foundation for sure.
Cool. Yeah, and that's always kind of been my thought on it, because I went the opposite way. You know, I didn't go to trade school. I learned everything, you know, in the trades from my dad,
Yeah.
who went to trade school later in his life for something that he never ended up pursuing. He went to school for HVAC and refrigeration after he started, you know, repairing the restaurant equipment, and he stuck to restaurant equipment. So, you know, that's kind of the way that I learned. And I always thought that if I had gone to some type of trade school, that, you know, I probably would have been able to learn a little bit faster because I had the fundamental book knowledge to build on, you know.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
kind of same way with me with the tools, you know. um, the most experience I had with tools when I was a kid was taking a hammer to my Rock'em Sock'em robots, you know, see how they work.
Yeah.
The parents did not appreciate that after Christmas morning, I'll tell you. But anyway, neither here nor there. um, so look, we both grew up kind of in a time where I don't think either of us thought that the trades were going to be broadcasted, you know, the way that they are right now, or the way that they're starting to. Um, but obviously, we take advantage of the opportunities that we have in front of us in this day and age, that, you know, what
Mhm.
this day and age provides. So, how did you recognize the opportunity to start a podcast, and why did you do it?
That's a good one. And it didn't really start with the podcast. The whole social media thing started from, I guess, being online and seeing groups that had already been formed for a while, um, primarily on Facebook, and just reading negativity, just everybody hammering on everybody, and I'm like, well, I'm going to start my own uh, blog type thing on Facebook, and basically it just started very simple. I would just take a picture of a unit I was working on and just go through what I did that day, and slowly people started to follow, and I found that being positive in these posts was actually creating a snowball effect of positivity, and more people were jumping on board that way of doing things. And you still get the negative comments, obviously, because people were, in my mind, people were bred into these groups, and there was this culture of being negative. So that's the way they thought they had to be in every one of these groups, was to be negative. And I would literally stay up some nights fighting with these people, you know what I mean, on Facebook, and trying to get them to turn around and be positive people. Now, other people would see these fights. Some people would jump on their side. Some people would jump on my side. But the whole mission was to create a positive environment. And and when I think back to these battles with people, I was contributing to that negativity, because I should have just turned around and said something positive back to them. So, like, I don't know if you listen to Gary V and see his Instagram feeds, but it's all, you got to be nice, like kindness wins, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I started taking like a real approach to that. So now if somebody's out of line, like, I just say something nice back to them, and it just baffles them half the time. Like, hey, you need a hug or something like that, or give a gif of two men hugging each other. You know what I mean? And it kind of just breaks up the hate a little bit, and it gets people laughing and stuff. So I've kind of had to shift from being the person that would argue, say, hey, don't do that here, don't do, and just give some kindness back to them, because who knows, maybe they're having a bad day. You know what I mean? Maybe they just need to feel that somebody cares or whatever. I don't want to sound like I'm like a Care Bear going around giving all these HVAC techs hugs, but that's just the new approach I've taken to all of this. So it started there, and it just kind of grew into different platforms like Instagram, LinkedIn. I'm really concentrating now on the YouTube channel. I'm trying to build the audience, and the podcast thing was something that I didn't think I'd ever get into, just because I seen other people doing podcasts, and I seen these two computer screens, mics, mixers in front of them. I'm like, I don't have time for this, right? And then I scrolled through my Instagram feed one day, and I seen this ad for Anchor. And it was like the simplest way to produce a podcast, or whatever their slogan was at the time. So I downloaded the app, and from there on in, it was history, man. You just pick up the phone, you press record, you hold the phone to your ear, and you can record a segment. And I can do it in my van, on the roof, wherever I am, right? And the audio sounds pretty good just straight from a phone. Like, I've experimented with different mics, like a headset, I had a little video game mixing thing with a video game headset, but I just went straight, press the button on Anchor app, and right into my phone, because the mic on a phone is actually really, really good. And that's kind of how the podcast started. And I've just been kind of growing with it through time. It's been almost a year and a half now since I launched it. And I'm enjoying it, actually. I didn't think I would enjoy the podcast aspect, but I actually really do.
That's awesome. So it actually started on Facebook, and it's funny you mentioned too that taking a positive approach, because I've noticed that a lot on Facebook too. Not so much now. I think it's starting to get better, but um, you know there wasn't, and I guess there still is quite a bit of negativity. And I used to be the same way. With my YouTube channel, I used to get a lot of comments. Just people wanting to pick a fight.
Yeah.
And my initial instinct back then was to pick the fight and win, but as you grow up, and you kind of realize, in the grand scheme of things, by looking at all the social platforms and all of that positivity really does come out on top. It kind of helps you gain a little bit of perspective in that sense. And I think it only helps build what you're trying to promote. um, so I think that's really awesome. I think it's funny you never had an intention of starting a podcast, and now here you are with like one of the biggest podcasts in the industry.
Well, thank you. I don't know if it's there's a bunch out there. So I mean, there's a lot of competition, but everybody does their own thing, and each person does their own thing well. I'm just doing the way I want to do it, and if people listen, man, that is fabulous. And anybody that's watching this or listening to this that does tune in, I really appreciate it. 100% for sure.
Awesome, as do I. And so you clearly know your stuff. I've seen all your content. You clearly know your stuff when it comes to the art of mechanics and all of that. And I know you're humble in it too, which is awesome. I think that's important to remember. For a lot of people in the industry and entering into the industry and all of that. And you do a great job of portraying all that throughout social media and the podcast and everything you got going on. So, of all the things that you do, what would you say gives you the most satisfaction?
That's a good one. It's tough, because when you do this, it's almost like there's so many people involved, because the different platforms, the spread is so wide, and it feels like a task that's thankless, right? Just putting out content every day, and thinking, and like there's a lot of work that goes into it, and it takes up a lot of time in my head to plan out, to do all this. And I think for me, the the most the thing that I like the best is when I'm having a bad day, and I just pick up my phone, and I have like 3 messages from people saying thank you for what you do. And I'm like, wow, like I didn't even the fact that you're listening is one thing, that I see that you're the listens on the podcast, yeah, they're listening, but I don't know what's going through the person's head when they're listening. Oh, this guy's doesn't know what he's talking about. I don't like this podcast, but I'm listening anyway. This, what I mean? But when I get these thank yous from people, and not only a thank you, but hey, that podcast I listened to helped me through my day, or it helped me through my job. And I'm like, wow, like for one person to say that every few weeks makes everything all worth it. And that's where I think I get the most reward.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's a lot to be said about, being able to feel like you contributed in some way or another to somebody's life, whether that's as small as giving them a tip on, a repair, or completely changing their life by, giving them an opportunity to succeed in
Yeah,
something that they didn't know was there, or whatever it is. I think that that's incredibly rewarding and satisfying, and a big part of the trades. Not only through social media, but really just in the industry itself, like the guys that you mentioned that were training you up. Yeah, I'm sure you said thank you once or twice, and I'm sure that they appreciated that too. So it's all over the industry, and I think it goes a long way.
yeah. You definitely have to be humble and have gratitude towards people that are trying to help you, because I mean, everybody starts somewhere and not everybody knows everything. Like you don't come out of the womb just knowing how to do things. Somebody had to teach you along the way, right? So the people that teach you, no matter who they are, um, yeah, you got to have gratitude towards them. 100% you do. And you got to respect those people for taking the time out of their day or out of their lives, because everybody's busy. So if somebody takes time out of their day or their life to try to help you, and especially help you personally, not just in a general aspect, you got to have gratitude towards them. And I think most people do, which is excellent.
Yeah, time is the rarest of commodities, and therefore the most valuable thing that you can give. And I think it's important to remember that, and all across the industry, with your peers, with your family. If anybody is willing to lend you their time, that means something.
Yes.
Um, so I feel like there's a few folks out there, obviously, my advocacy, the skilled trades, and we've talked about that before.
Cool.
Um, and I've noticed some people out there, especially since the book came out. It's kind of funny, some of the people coming out of the woodwork, but there are there seem to be a select group of people that um, tend to think that a strong advocacy of the skilled trades means pushing people into the trades that shouldn't necessarily be there. Um, I'm curious how you feel about that.
Well, I've heard that as well. And there was one particular comment that I seen about the same subject that you're talking about that made me really think about something. And if anybody thinks that, I'll tell you right now, I'm probably one of the people that shouldn't have gone into a trade by their standards, because I had never picked up a tool in my life. And when I first started, I felt useless when I was on jobs, because I would see other people my age that had been in the trade for way less than me, because they had this background of using tools. Maybe they grew up fixing cars with their dad or their uncle, or they were doing other things that involved tools, like maybe fixing small engines, like lawnmowers or ATVs or whatever, dirt bikes. Maybe they were into that kind of stuff. I wasn't into any of that stuff. And and those people, I'm probably one of those guys that they were talking about that shouldn't have been in a trade, right? And you have to prove people wrong. You just have to go in. If you know that in your brain you have the ability to tackle anything that's in front of you, I mean, the sky's the limit, really. You just have to have the confidence, and you have to have the wherewithal, and you just have to pick up the slack and move forward, because anybody can do it. Anybody can.
Yep. Which is again why positivity and encouragement, I think, is so important in this industry as well. Because I share that with you, Gary. I'm one of those people that probably shouldn't have been in the trades by their standards as well. I mean, we've had prior conversations. I was jumping off buildings and getting set on fire, in my early 20s, and that has nothing to do with turning wrenches or swinging hammers.
Yeah.
Um, so, and I'm a firm believer. I talk a lot about the perceptions and all of this, but I'm a firm believer that there's a lot of talent out there that doesn't enter into the trades, doesn't ever pick up a hammer, doesn't ever pick up a wrench, just because, either of the perceptions, or they want to do something else, or whatever it is. So in my eyes, the advocacy, for the skilled trades, all it's doing is opening up the eyes of the people that could be superstars in this industry. And again, it falls on them in a personal responsibility standpoint to want it, um, badly enough to prove it. But they can't prove anything if they don't give it a shot and they don't know it exists.
Mhm. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, there's different people that come from different areas of life, and some of them might not even know what the trades involve until they actually get into it. But I mean, everybody learns at different paces. Sometimes that in itself can be frustrating for somebody that's training somebody, because people do learn at different paces, and they learn in different ways. Some people might learn from a book and they can read everything from a book and just go out and do it. Some people might have to actually be there physically and watch someone else do it. You know what I mean? Because they're visual learners. So you have to, as somebody that is training people, you have to kind of adapt to how they learn. And a good trainer will be able to do that. A good trainer doesn't say, this is my way and this is how you're going to learn. A good trainer will adapt and find ways to teach so everybody can benefit from it.
Yeah. Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that's big in this industry, is finding the right way to train the people, based on the best way that they learn. I myself, I'm a tangible learner, so I actually have to be doing something to learn it. I have to feel myself doing it wrong in order to know how to do it right. So it's a little frustrating sometimes. I wish I could just, read it on a page and say,
Yeah.
"Oh, okay, I can do this now," or like the Matrix, just plug it into my brain and, oh, hey, now I know kung fu. All right. But we're not at that point yet, unfortunately. So people learn in different ways, and it's important to try to be able to connect with them on their level to make sure that they do. Um, so yeah, I talk about the skilled trades gap every once in a while. So I'm curious. Obviously, there's an array of issues, right, as to why this gap might exist. But I'm curious to get your take on, what the biggest contributing factors you think are to the skilled trades gap, and what you think can be done about it.
So when I look at my kids, like my oldest is 10. So my oldest kid, like my kids, they know what I do for a living, and they've seen me fix things around the house and all that. But that stuff interests them to a certain point. Like that they want to go out and start learning how to use the lawnmower to make money and cut grass and stuff like that. But what really interests them is the internet, and watching people that they enjoy watching making YouTube videos and making money, and doing what they love. That, like, because obviously these people that are making these videos on YouTube, they love doing it, and they're making a killing from it. So these young kids, they see the advantage of the internet, and they see that people in the trades, they gotta get up early, they gotta leave their house, they have to perhaps get dirty, lift heavy things, you know what I mean? So it doesn't seem appealing to them. And there's been many people that have talked about the way the trades are portrayed on TV and movies and stuff like that. Everybody seems to be like overweight, messy, dirty. They're when they're eating, they got like food all over their mouth. They're swearing. They don't look like they're intelligent whatsoever. So they see this, right? And they're like, well, why would I want to do that when I can buy a phone and I could make YouTube videos of me playing video games in my room and make a living, right? So because that stuff is marketed to them on YouTube, and these people that make these channels, they do a very good job at marketing to kids, because they have millions and millions of views, and most of the stuff you watch is garbage on there. It's just like, it just does this to my brain. Like,
Yeah.
There's nothing involved in the videos that is educational or nothing like that. So I think the way that the trades are marketed has to be changed. The trades need to be marketed differently. They gotta they gotta show that what you're doing is can be fun. Maybe yeah, you get dirty, but at the end of the day, you're gonna feel this sense of pride in you, because most of the trades that are going out are helping people, customers, whether it be fixing their air conditioner, or fixing a single lady that's a widow whose garage door has failed and she can't open it. At the end of the day, you do something like that for somebody, yeah, you're getting paid, but you also feel a sense of pride in you that you're out there helping people. And we got to make the trade look cool. There's people on Instagram and Facebook doing this because they've created their own brand, and they're showing themselves going to the gym, working out, staying fit, eating good, and buying these cool tools that they're using with these, like the kids nowadays, they love apps and their electronics, but all these tools are now going app based, so you can get on your phone and you can check readings of a system on your phone. So we have to kind of promote all this stuff to the kids, so they see that we're not just a bunch of overweight, uneducated people out there that are just getting dirty and lifting heavy things. You know what I mean? We can actually do some intelligent things, and we can actually help a lot of people by being in a skilled trades, and we can take it further. We can own our own businesses, and we can branch out to different things along the way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the constant, that's the thing that I hear the most is basically letting people know that the trades is all about helping people in one form or another. Um, that's just it's I hear it time and time again, and there's a lot of truth to it. It's all truth, and that's, I think, what needs to be broadcasted. That's a good answer.
And
Um,
I mean, go ahead, make a YouTube channel, but most of these channels, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of channels, and there's a very small percent that are actually making good money off of it. So try, go ahead, start a YouTube channel, but most likely you're not going to make a living out of it. So you need something that's going to allow you to make a living day in, day out. That for a lot of, not 100% recession proof, but a lot of it is, especially if you're doing service where you're fixing things that are breaking, because things are always going to break. There might not always be a building to build, you know what I mean? But there's things that are always going to be breaking, and they're going to need service. So getting into that side of a trade where you're repairing and servicing equipment, whatever it is, whatever it may be, there's always going to be a job for you and always money to be made.
Absolutely. Fun fact, you know who the highest grossing YouTube earner is to date?
Um, no, I don't.
It's an 8-year-old kid named Ryan.
I was
Ryan Toys Review.
He was in the back of my head.
Yeah.
There was one I was thinking FGTV. I was actually I researched them because my kids watch FGTV,
Hmm.
Family Gaming TV or something like that, and they make about, I think it's around $15,000 a day just off YouTube. I don't know what Ryan's making, but I know these guys are one of the top earners, and there's another couple of young kids out there that are doing the same thing. It just baffles my
It's
mind.
amazing. He grossed $21 million in 2018.
Wow.
Yeah, and my daughter is addicted to that show.
My 3-year-old is too. He
Yeah,
loves Ryan. I don't know
yeah.
what it is. I
I
told my
don't
wife,
know.
I said let's put GoPros in every corner of the house and just make a YouTube video, a YouTube channel of our daily lives, and we'll be millionaires.
There to go. I call it the
Yes.
real Sims.
Yeah, she doesn't want to do it. She doesn't want to expose her lives. But I don't know. It was just a joke. But I mean, nobody these days. I mean, you're not safe from the camera for anywhere you go. So.
No, definitely not. Um, so listen, you're a young dude, successful in what you do, obviously, and your trajectory at this point seems pretty wide open. So I'm curious how you see the next 10 years of your life unfolding.
That's a very good question, because I've thought about the next 3 or 4 years of my life unfolding, and it's basically to continue to grow what I've got now. Um, just keep the numbers moving in the right direction, and looking at opportunities that come in and seeing if they're going to benefit this trade, and using them, leveraging those opportunities to help other people within the trade as well. Because I do have some sponsors that I work with, and every single one, in some form of another, is helping somebody in the trade somewhere along the way. And that's what I continue to want to do, is grow the numbers, um, receive opportunities when they present themselves, so I can present those opportunities to other people, whether it be a tool, whether it be a software that's helping people, um, or new ways of doing things, and just continuing to educate. And I would eventually like to put the tools down. I mean, because I've been doing this for 20 years, so my body, I mean, I do my best to eat well and exercise when I can, but the body starts to break down after a while. So I guess long term, 10 years from now, I'd like to put the tool bag down on a full-time basis. I still want to do things with the tools, but on a full-time basis, I'd like to kind of step back from the tools a little bit and stop from climbing up ladders and walking through 3 feet of snow across a roof and stuff like that. I think I've done my part there. So over the next 10 years, I mean, that'll be 30 years physically in the trade. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I can if I can continue to grow this and improve on this, and just kind of show people opportunities and ways to do things off the tools, I would love to do that. I really would.
Awesome. And it's what an opportunity we have in this day and age, right? Because I mean, 10 years ago, we wouldn't have thought that that was really even possible. Your options would be working in the trades, and then if you wanted to help people, go be a teacher in a classroom somewhere, or a trainer with a company or whatever. And now you have the ability to teach people everything about this industry on a worldwide scale, through social media and everything else. It's amazing that we have that kind of technology now.
Yeah,
um,
it truly is.
so it's no secret that so many kids these days just aspire to be seen, heard, and really just make a difference. That's what I'm finding when I talk to people about the coming generations and everything else. Um, but it seems like a lot of them don't think that that can happen in the skilled trades, which at the root of it, I think is kind of what we're trying to solve. So, what advice would you have for young people on their pursuit of success?
The pursuit of success. Well, I mean, in the beginning, you really have to put your head down and work hard. You have to absorb everything that you can, um, positively or negatively, because negative things in your life shape who you are later. So you need to stay on top of that stuff and take every experience that comes at you, and use it as a way to make your life better. Because if you make your life better, you'll be happier in your life. And as far as exposing yourself, if you really want to do expose yourself, and you have the opportunity to do that now, everybody does. Um, that's something that you have to think about hard and long, because if you want to expose yourself and you want to create something out of exposing yourself, you can't just be lackadaisical in it. You have to go all in. You have to expose your life, your feelings, the truths, the negative, the positive about yourself, and that's what really attracts other people to what you're doing, while you're exposing yourself, because people like the realness of other people. And if all you do is take videos of your good work and all the positive things you do, yeah, that's cool. But when you start posting or taking pictures of the mistakes you've made, that resonates with people, because people everywhere in the world make mistakes. So if you are growing a platform, once you start showing people that you're a human being and you make mistakes too, you'll see that platform raise up quicker and higher than you ever would if you were just focusing on the untruths of yourself. You know what I mean? You got to be true to yourself. You got to be yourself. And when you are yourself, people will recognize that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Authenticity equates to relatability, and that's what it boils down to. Be your authentic self, and show the good with the bad. Because everybody has good and bad, and then those people will relate to you, and the easier then it is to reach them in the way that you hope to reach them, and that is the objective after all.
Yeah, yeah. And also too, like for the young kids out there that want to be successful, is that you can't project yourself 20 years into the future and see people that are 20 years older than you driving nice trucks and living in nice houses and try to be them. You have to be you in the beginning, and you have to grow that gradually. You can't jump into success. You have to grow success. And growing success is hard work. It's not easy. And you got to put the work in to get there. And if you don't, I mean, you're gonna stay flat. If you want to raise up, you got to put the work in.
Yep. No, that's really great advice. I just had a conversation on somebody with LinkedIn, or somebody on LinkedIn yesterday, uh, about people's why they do what they do. And one of the things I think it's important to remember is to consistently realign yourself, and the young people out there listening should heed this advice, because the why is on this pedestal, right, and it's like Simon Sinek, made the why famous, and everybody's in search of it. If you know your why, you'll figure everything out. The problem is that people don't recognize that their why changes throughout their life. 10 years ago, my why was to prove everybody wrong. I had a chip on my shoulder. I wanted to do the things that everybody told me that I couldn't do. They were kind of more focused inward on me. And then after I had my kids, my why completely changed to you know uh, being and acting in a way that would make my kids proud of me. And it took me a little while. It took me like a year to even recognize that the reason why I wasn't as motivated as I was before is because I wasn't in alignment with myself anymore. My motivations were completely different. And as soon as you realign, you can see that full picture again. So I think it's important for everybody to remember that, uh, yes, the why is important, but also the why changes throughout your life. So reassess, reevaluate, and realign. you know
I totally agree with you. Reinventing yourself is a major factor in being successful. And
Absolutely.
also too is looking in the mirror and and realizing that what you're portraying yourself as sometimes is not who you really are, and just taking it down a notch and just being yourself. I mean, a lot of people walking around and they act like they're the best at everything. They're a badass, but that's because they're portraying themselves as something they're not. Um, but when they look in the mirror, they probably don't see that in them because they have some sort of drawback, or they're I can't think of the word that I'm trying to spit out a
Like an
word here.
insecurity.
Yeah, an insecurity. That's right. And they're not being honest with their insecurities. And you need to be honest with your insecurities. And like I said, if you let the world know what your insecurities are, and this is crazy because I always think of this as a way to keep the negativity down on a lot of things I post on social media. And it was actually funny because Gary V, who I follow and I listen to a lot of his content, actually posted something similar not too long ago. So have you ever seen the movie 8 Mile
Yeah.
with Eminem? Okay,
Yeah.
so the last scene or one of the last scenes in the movie, when he goes up against um, the other rapper in the rap battle, all he does is talk about everything that's negative in his life and throws the mic at the guy, and he's got nothing to say,
Yep.
right? Because he just exposed himself. And that's what happens when you expose yourself. When you expose yourself and put everything out front, nothing can come back at you because you've already said, hey, this is me. What are you going to say? I've already admitted it.
Yep. Tell
Right.
these
So be
people something about me they don't already know.
yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Great advice, Gary. I know you're busy, so we'll wrap it up there. But I really appreciate you jumping on with me as always. And is there anything else that you want to add before we wrap it up?
No, I think we got it all wrapped up, man.
Cool, man. Well, why don't you go ahead and tell people where they can find you, and then we'll get a move on.
HVAC Know It All. I mean, that's pretty much the name of all my platforms on Instagram, Facebook, and Gary McCreadie on LinkedIn, the HVAC Know It All podcast, HVAC Know It All on YouTube, and also HVACKnowItAll.com, which is a website that I've not been paying enough attention to lately, but um, I'm actually possibly looking for some writers to do like a piece once a month. So if anybody's listening and they want to write technical pieces on the trade, hit me up, Gary at HVACKnowItAll.com, or message me on one of those platforms, and we can go from there.
Awesome. Well, again, I appreciate it so much for your time, Gary. Thank you.
No problem, Josh. Have a good day.
All right, you too. All right, let me get this.